boost after COVID and we saw a boom. And then that was short-lived, that boom, because I think then everybody realized that costs were overtaking absolutely everything else.
Traditionally, we're talking about SEO. Is that a big part of your strategy? Do you see that as sort of like an integral part of your marketing mix?
I really think the best space for AI is to be able to pull together all of the different packages and components that we buy into. We've got to be clever about where we not hide these costs or hide these increases, but where we pop them so people are fully understanding that everything's just gone up.
A very warm welcome to the Hotel Growth Podcast. I'm delighted to welcome a fantastic guest, Joseph Farrar. Joseph has spent his entire career in the hospitality industry, starting at just 15 years old and working his way up through some incredible properties. After a successful 8-year tenure as general manager of Holdsworth House Hotel, he took on an exciting new challenge at Owston Hall, where he's leading a major transformation, repositioning the hotel into a premier resort destination. With deep industry experience and a sharp eye for growth, Joseph brings valuable insights into everything from rising costs to AI in hospitality. I'm so excited to introduce Joseph to the show. I hope you find it really as insightful as I did, and I hope you enjoy listening. Joseph, great to have you on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Good, yeah, I'm delighted to have you here, and I'd like to. We're going to cover a lot of ground today, but I think maybe as a starting point, it'd be great to get a bit more about your background in the industry and your role currently at Owston Hall.
Yeah, sure thing. So this is the only thing I've ever done in this industry. So started off at the tender age of 15 at my local hotel. Never really left after that kind of point. So I did a few years sort of within the local hotel. Really kind of got the bug for it. Very much realised early doors that this is something that I wanted to do, and felt that this was something that I could progress with. Went away and studied this at university at Leeds, or was Leeds Met, now Leeds Beckett, I think it's called. I knew, and that was it for me. This is the only thing that I've ever wanted to do. I was very fortunate to be given some sort of really good opportunities very early on. I did some time working for Holdsworth House Hotel in the early sort of 2010s. A year there, then left and worked for Principal Group, so specifically the Met Hotel in Leeds, which was a fantastic opportunity. Really learning a different side of the industry that I've probably been exposed to before. I've mainly concentrated on kind of private hotels, working for individual owners, and going and working for Principal Haley was a real eye-opener into the more sort of corporate, commercial world of hotels and how that worked. So a fantastic few years there. And then the opportunity arose for me to rejoin Holdsworth House Hotel and take that on as general manager, and that was in 2015. So I joined there in 2015, spent 8 fantastic years working for a phenomenal family who had owned the business for 60 years. Fantastic people to work for and with. And we did a lot there. We navigated through COVID, which was a real kind of unknown in its time, but no, it was fantastic to have that experience. It really opened a lot of doors for me in the sense of working within quite a high-profile Yorkshire hotel that had real standards that have been driven through for a long time, and being able to take that perhaps to the next level and really reinforce some of those standards and move that business forward was a great privilege and a great honour. It allowed me to meet and network with quite some fantastic hoteliers within this Yorkshire area, which there are an abundance of, but some of them really stand above. But after eight sort of fantastic years there, I was given an opportunity to return home, if you like, to Doncaster, and Owston Hall came kind of knocking, and really the project here was too much for me to kind of turn down, and ultimately made the move and joined Owston Hall about 18 months ago.
Fantastic. And how's the role going?
Yeah, fantastic. It's a real project here. It's a fantastic building and a fantastic property that is undergoing quite a monumental change, really. So previously operated for the last 25 years by one family as more of a golf club, with one bedrooms attached to it.
Yeah.
New ownership came in 2022 with quite significant ideas of a rebrand, reposition, and really take the building and the business to the next level. So we're going through quite a huge planning process at the moment. But that's the inclusion of a brand new spa, another 20 bedrooms being added on, a complete redesign and redevelopment of the internals of this building, as well as the conversion of our coach house building into some ancillary accommodation, and then development of our historic walled garden as well. So huge kind of undertaking to really rebrand and reposition this hotel, and move it on to the next level.
And just to pick up on this, is there locally, is it being well received? Because obviously, if you were historically a golf course, or golf, golf area, golf product, and now you're very much positioning yourself as a sort of more of a resort hotel, if that's the right term to use, is it being well received locally? Because that must there's a bit of challenge there, I'm sure, to get that right.
Yeah, it is. I think initially there was a welcoming of the fact that this work needed to be done, and actually having it done this way really will benefit the golf in the long run as well. So whilst it's a change and a reposition, it's something that will benefit all of the aspects of the business as well, and make ultimately all of it stronger. Individual golf courses do have their struggles and the sort of pitfalls that we fall into. Becoming more of a resort hotel and having golf a part of it instead of the main thing that leads the dance really will benefit every sort of avenue of this business.
Fantastic. Well, good luck with the whole project. It sounds fantastic. Let's dive more into current challenges, of which there are many right now facing the industry. What do you see as the really big visceral ones in your business?
It's always going to be the rising costs. I think at the moment we are not alone in suffering with this. The cost changes over the last 2, 3, 4 years have been unprecedented, really, completely unknown coming into this. I don't think we saw a huge boost after COVID, and we saw a boom, and then that was short-lived, that boom, because I think then everybody realised that the costs were overtaking absolutely everything else. Everybody's got to be a bit savvy around that and find ways of combating it. But yeah, the costs really for me are going to be the significant challenge for all businesses moving forward. And there's so many of them that sort of fall back into hospitality. You see food costs rising, your energy costs rising, wage costs rising. All these things have got to be combated and also ultimately offset within the business. There's only so much sometimes one can do to offset those costs. Yeah.
And are you seeing, I mean, obviously I suppose the uneducated suggestion is, well, just put those costs onto the customer. But is that possible? Are you hitting that glass ceiling where customers just aren't prepared to pay the rates that you need?
I think so, a little bit. I think there's it's easier said than done to just, it's the easy answer for everybody, we'll just pass on the costs. But the realism of that is, well, if we pass on every single direct cost to the guest, then, well, actually, are we just limiting the amount of guests that come? So sometimes it's ultimately about redesigning the business that you're running and saying, well, actually, these costs are going to be here. We can incorporate some of them into the business, but do we need to change the way that we run this business, or ultimately the way that we operate, to try and then change things to ensure that the profit line is still there?
I had a really interesting conversation along these lines, specifically with my friend he's a private chef. He's a Michelin trained private chef, and he does some consultancy for sort of that sort of caliber of restaurant. And he was saying that when he walked into a business that he was consulting in, that the current chef had basically just added I think a sort of 70% markup on everything, and just without really any more detailed thought or strategic thought in terms of that menu. So ultimately some of the prices, especially for like the Côte de Boeuf, was just astronomical. And so I imagine what I took from that exchange was that you've really got to be a bit sort of smart about, what customers are prepared to pay, even though some of the, this particular establishment is at the very highest end. You still need to be maybe a little bit smart about what dishes are your loss leaders, or that sort of stuff. Are you finding you need to adopt the same sort of approach in your
Definitely, it's certainly not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Our costs have gone up 20%. We put everything up 20%. It just doesn't work like that. And I think one thing that I always try and stress to the team is if we can try and increase in the areas that people don't have a direct relationship to of that cost. So if you start putting every single bottle of wine up by £5, people have an understanding of what they can buy wine for elsewhere. It's very obvious. It's very easy to do. Similarly, sometimes with elements, like steak, let's say, put in the cook roughly by that price. People have an understanding of what they can buy these things for elsewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes the unique things that hotels have or that we offer, if you can increase your price within there, that people can't immediately relate it and go, well, actually, that costs me X at home, or it costs me, down the supermarket or in other establishments. We've got to be clever about where we not hide these costs or hide these increases, but where we can pop them so people are, fully understanding that everything's just gone up. It's certainly not a one size fits all entity with this.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, what I take from what you're saying is really just about pricing according to the value that you can offer. So, if you are, as you say, that steak, you understand what that costs in other establishments, but what guests perhaps can't have in your particular establishment is, that find those things and then price,
and
price
that's where your
accordingly.
marketing comes in, and that's why it's not just, ultimately, nobody is coming to me. So in terms of those general needs, nobody comes to me because they need to eat. If somebody has that need, they're going to find that elsewhere. They're coming to us for an experience, and that's the difference. And it's making sure that costing or that pricing is relevant to that experience, not necessarily just to the product that they're buying from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a really sort of eloquent way of putting it, Joseph. Thank you. All right, let's move on talk about OTAs. Obviously, we talked about rising costs. Is getting more direct bookings as hard today as it always has been, or are you seeing things get a little bit easier?
It's always hard. It is, and it's a constant battle that I think that we all go through, and we all acknowledge that, we all wish that there was this magic wand that we waved and it fixed the whole issue, but it's not like that. It's never going to be like that. And it's sometimes just embracing the OTAs and understanding what they are and what you need them for sometimes. And there is a need for them. There actually is, or else we would all just delist our products from booking.com and we would never bother. But that's not what we do, because we understand that there is a need. And it's embracing that. It's going, right, okay, well, how easy is it for me to attain the reach that they have on my own organically or through other methods that I want to use? Nigh on impossible. The infrastructure, the finances that they have behind them, I can't do that. So, okay, let's use them for what they are, but then also make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to capture those direct business. So those savvy guests that go, okay, well, I've seen this on booking.com, I'm now going to look direct. Make sure that our process on our website is as seamless as the booking.com process, or the offer is better than booking.com, or to make sure we capture. If somebody gets onto our website and it's harder than booking.com, because booking.com is easy, it's an easy process to go through, you've lost them. I wouldn't blame them for booking on booking.com. We've got to make sure that our processes match up. But ultimately, OTAs are a tool of getting your product in front of a whole host of people that you never even dreamed of before. And, it's using it. If somebody's just looking for, somebody wants to book a hotel in Doncaster, if somebody types into Google Hotel Doncaster, I better make sure that I'm near the top of that list, so I'm capturing people that have gone that way. Ultimately, if people are going straight to booking.com and are just searching for a hotel, then I need to again make sure that our product's visible there and capture it through that way. We never want to lose anybody, but it's using them for what they are. And I think, we'd all want rid and we'd all want less of a commission, but it's embracing what they can offer you and making sure you're doing your job as well.
Yeah. So maybe if I probe a little bit deeper into what you said there. So if we use that example of, when you search for a traditional sort of search term or keyword, Hotel Doncaster, traditionally we're talking about SEO. Is that a big part of your strategy? Do you see that as sort of like an integral part of your marketing mix?
Yeah, it's got to be. And again, all of these things build a part of the picture. So it's making sure that you're visible to everybody that is going to come a different way and is going to try and find you. Ultimately, if somebody searches for you and you're not visible till page 5, what's the point? You've not done your job. And it's making sure that all of these things are working in tandem together. So yeah, it's everything. It's all these things that work to make sure ultimately we're running this business in the right way that we should be doing. But pushing out through SEO, through appropriate keyword search, and making sure that you're doing all those things. I mean, ultimately, if you're not doing it through Booking.com, you're doing it through Google, because I'm paying somebody else for it for keyword search as well. So it's just embracing all of those tools and making sure that we don't go too much on it.
There's a really, really kind of topical point for me. I've just this morning written an article about how AI overviews, so that kind of feature of the Gemini's feature on Google. There's other options available through other search engines as well, but probably Gemini is the most prominent, and how SEO, doing good SEO for your brand's website, is actually really now integral to be featuring in those AI overviews. And those AI overviews have actually now completely taken over in terms of maximize. You need to be utilizing those to be able to be visible on Google, because they dominate such a really top space. They're now above the ads. So I think it's certainly what we're finding is that SEO has never been more important for hotels. It's great that you're putting that right at the forefront of your strategy too.
Well, it's constantly about embracing that change as well. If there is something new that's coming in, it's making sure that we are an early adopter of it. And that doesn't mean just taking everything on that comes our way, or ultimately spending on that things that, perhaps we've not investigated properly, but it's making sure that we do adopt things that position us in the best place possible to capture as much business as we need.
I'm just going to briefly interrupt this conversation to inform you about hotelgrowth.co.uk. If you visit that website, you'll be able to enter the National Hotel Growth Survey. By answering a handful of multiple choice questions, all to do around the subject of growing your hotel business, you'll be able to compare your answers with the rest of the wider industry across the UK and across the rest of the world. We've had over 200 hotels take part, and just by answering those questions, takes a few minutes, you'll be able to instantly see how your answers relate to the rest of the industry, and you'll be given straightforward, straight talking advice about what you can do to improve your hotel growth prospects for 2025. So head over to hotelgrowth.co.uk to fill in that survey and get your personalised report now. Yeah, great. Okay, well, given the where we've headed with the conversation so far, I think now's a good chance to ask you about AI. What's your view? How are you adopting it in your business? What's your view? Do you feel that there's, that there is space for it in the guest experience as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, AI has or will. I think we're still in very infancy of what the capabilities are for it. But I think it will offer a lot of automation. I keep going on about the team all the time. We're going, can we automate as many of these processes that we go through all the time, so that actually our HODs, our team, are not spending too much time on the process orientation and actually allowing ourselves to spend more time with guests. I think AI fits well into that. I think that's really where we're going to see that clean separation of going, right, we can get some of these processes done quicker, easier, and actually automated, so that we're not spending too much time in the humdrum of 2-minute processes. And I think, as I say, AI will really elevate that. When I think of over the years, the volume of inquiries that we get through for all different aspects of the business, and I've trialed various chatbots and how they kind of work, and some are successful, some kind of aren't. But then actually AI will just eradicate the need for these traditional chatbots, if you like, because that will just take the information directly from your website and pass that straight back out as an automation. So, all these functions, I really think the best space for AI is to be able to pull together all of the different packages and components that we buy into. We ultimately have something. We have our booking engines, we have our restaurant engines, we all have all these different things. But then it never stops anybody still sending a Facebook message saying, can I book a table? Well, if there's an AI integration that we can go, right, well, let's actually move that from there to there. That's, for me, how it starts to separate itself. And it becomes something, a real tool that we can always get behind.
So as maybe a working example of what you just said then, so is it a case then your adoption of AI is really when despite all of the wonderful technology that makes it super easy, guests still want a manual response to answer a question about a specific need? You
provide every tool imaginable to a guest to get the answer or ultimately the end goal of what they need. So I can provide every link, every booking engine, everything possible. That does not stop that individual sending a message through Instagram saying, can I book a table? Do you have a table available at 2:00 on Friday? And that will always be there. But actually, how can we make sure that the backup to that, or the end goal, is that person does get that table that they've asked for, that person can make sure that goes through? Because it goes into Instagram, and at the moment, and through that messaging service, it requires an individual to make sure we respond. Now, if I would do have people responding to those constantly, I fear that sometimes are we capturing everything? If if AI can take care of a little bit of that for us, then all the better.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you see its adoption, or are you using any form of AI in the actual guest experience, sort of in the property?
What we're experimenting with at the moment is the real personalization, how AI can help with that. And I think that's the next step really for us of how we adopt with it. And really that kind of goes into, the ever-changing needs of the guests and how all of our guests are so different, and personalizing the experiences. I think that's where AI, again, is going to really, really help us streamline those processes and make sure that it's not manual tasks that we're going through to want that personalization, that differential experience.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have an example of how that works, or how you see it work?
What we're experimenting with at the moment is bringing in how we can ensure that those repeat guests that we're getting through. So, ultimately, if we'll go back to OTAs and we're getting things through booking.com, how we can turn that experience around so we can make sure that their experience is more personalized, is different to each individual person, and then ultimately try and make that a direct booking next time around.
Yeah, great. And do you see it? I suppose this really kind of comes down to the style of property that you have, and perhaps Owston Hall wouldn't fit this bill, but obviously we're seeing a lot more of automated checkouts, and it's been around for a while now, where you don't have to speak to anyone. You can just press the iPad on reception a couple of times and get your key, and off you go. Do you see more of that type of adoption in your style of hotel?
Possibly, but I think, again, it comes down to the type of accommodation that you're offering. Ultimately, what is going to separate hotels away from, the Airbnbs? What's going to separate, luxury 4-5-star hotels in that market away from other entities? And it's that human element. And for me, I would never want to come away from that. I think service is always going to be what separates us. Yeah. Really, what people will always pay that extra for. So yes, I think it can help some of these processes. For me, it's helping the processes that enable us to get back to the guests. So really, yes, will I provide an option for our guests to pay and then leave and not worry about needing to speak to a human? Probably. Will I want every single guest to do that? No, because I want to be able to offer that service interaction to make sure that their experience with us is memorable, and that's what they take away from their time.
And how do you feel guest expectations have changed then in the advent of these really quite dramatic changes in technology? Do you think they are still fundamentally looking for that great level of hospitality from their experience, or are they perhaps more less sort of, I suppose, keen to engage with staff members and just kind of be left alone? What's your take?
I don't want to get too heavy into a generational divide, but without going down what Gen Z expect, I think we are seeing that complete separation. Really, we're always going to have guests that want genuine hospitality and want that proper interaction and want a more traditional setup. But equally, I think we're all going to be aware of there is a new generation now that are our future guests that actually do want to come to a different style of things, that are more conscious of points that perhaps we've overlooked for years gone by. They do want more automation, they do want things at the fingertips. They don't necessarily require the volume of human interaction perhaps that we've always valued ourselves on giving. So I think there is a necessity to make sure, and this really goes back to that personalization of saying, do we understand our guests? Do we understand what they want? Do we understand how we can offer them what they want and make sure that we're providing that right experience and that right service to them? So I think it's different, and I think this is probably a change in the tide almost of going, the traditional hospitality that we've seen for all these years, that will always be there, but we're all going to have to adapt and change and offer something a little bit different further down the line. And I think we're all going to have to change our products and our operation a little bit.
Yeah, I think the Gen Z thing is fascinating as well, because I think we often, or certainly I often, forget how old they are. I think they're the oldest ones of Gen Z. I think 27, 28 now, or something like that. So arguably, they're not all sort of teenagers coming through, they're stuck on their phones. These are working professionals that perhaps would frequent properties like Owston Hall for a weekend break. Are you seeing that sort of influx of younger travellers now coming in?
I think the most obvious example of that upper age bracket, they are now our bride and grooms. So that's where we need to be, okay, traditionally what we offered to our bride and grooms and how they wanted to interact with us and how they wanted to go through that booking process, how they wanted to lead up to the day. But now this has changed, things are different. I say that top end Gen Z bracket, they are now the people that we are trying to attract, and we have to adapt and make sure that we're offering that kind of same level of service, but in a different way to couples now coming through. And it's about keeping up with trends now more so than ever, because trends used to be seasonal or trends used to be yearly. I feel that trends are now weekly and monthly, and if we're not on top of those trends, because everything's so automatic, because everything's so instantaneous, because TikTok changes in one way from 1 minute to the next, how do we make sure that we're keeping on top of those trends?
I know that you've been quite active, or the business has been very active on TikTok as well. How is that working for you?
To say that I wasn't reluctant. I think reluctancy is probably not the way I would describe it, but I was hesitant, if you like, going, is this really, is TikTok necessary? Is this what it's about? Surely this is just a load of teenagers, looking at different things. And clearly not. So the team readily convinced me, and rightly so, to get involved in TikTok. And then, lo and behold, the next thing came along of going, Joe, we found these wonderful examples of sort of quirky little videos. Do you fancy doing a few of them? And they started with these questions that you would ask your boss. Essentially, me sat there being grilled, and ultimately their sort of pro rata to me was, Joe, just sit there and be you, just answer things as you would answer these things if we were sat in the office, and lo and behold we did, and it was met with fantastic applause. Looking back and looking at traditional hospitality and the way that we'd have marketed ourselves, is it the way that I'd done things 10 years ago? Absolutely not. But one video that we did was just me sort of inappropriate, quirkily talking to a member of the team. Got over 300,000 views. Wow. Now, if you ask any hotelier to do something and it will get their product to some 300,000 people, there's not a one in the world that would say no. So, we're all the same. We all want to make sure that we're getting the same reach for our product. Even more so, we've been really lucky recently. We did a photo shoot, and a chap that was previously on Love Island came along and worked with one of our male models for us on the day for one of our wedding photo shoots. Some of these videos have had 1.5 million views now on TikTok, and it's fantastic. I never appreciated the reach or the impact that these things can have. And, it's not, we always like to measure what we're doing. We like to try and get as much data out of these things as we possibly can and say, well, what metric is that? How's that worked? Is it actually converting anything? And sometimes we need to let go a little bit and go, let's just do these things. Let's see if it pays off further down the line. I think really that's the approach that we've taken a little bit with TikTok.
That's great. And I have to passionately agree with what you're saying in terms of, let's see how things go. And, we don't necessarily need to draw a direct line from, okay, so we did this activity and we paid money we put some resource into this. All the metrics are great, but did it actually deliver any direct bookings? Or, maybe you have that, maybe you don't. But I certainly feel that in today's world, more than ever, guests are taking so much longer to get from passive awareness to active consideration. And I think, things like getting and doing quirky videos on TikTok, like you say, give you that huge reach, and you're ultimately going to be pushing more and more potential customers, to that active consideration phase. So I think what you're doing is brilliant.
Well, we all know the bounce rate of our websites. We all know the open rates of our mail shots. Sometimes they're not as great as they are, previously. It doesn't stop you doing that. Ultimately, you don't know that one person that does open that mail shot, or that 15% that does, and the click-through rate from that, if they all convert, then it's worth doing. It's not to be discouraged saying, well, 85% didn't, 15% did, 20% did. Not all the metrics don't always need to be huge. If it works, then it works, and as long as the cost element to it doesn't outweigh what you're doing, all these things have got to be positive. It's all got to be profitable.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think what you're doing is brilliant. Let's move on in terms of your priorities as a general manager. You've obviously started in Owston Hall, I think you said 18 months ago. What are your priorities when you take on a new role? What are you looking to do?
I think early doors, it's establishing what we do well. What are our linchpins? What can we lean on? What do we not particularly do well? Where's our area for growth? Really, what are we not exploiting? What are we not involved in? What can we try and do a little bit better? And the key thing for me is, where's the team at? What is its strengths? What are the weaknesses? What do we need to try and do to improve that? What are the fundamentals that the team have? What's the culture? What do we need to try and embed within this team to move us on to the next level, and ensuring that communication is there? So a real sort of deep dive critical analysis of where the business is at, what it needs to move on, and doing it that way. I think that's certainly the approach I took here when I came to Owston Hall. It was, what are we doing really, really well at the moment? Where do we need to grow? Where do we need to expand? Where are our opportunities? And really kind of pushing in those directions. That's really the approach I've always taken.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, and it kind of circles back round to the rising costs, which we're are very omnipresent in our lives in 2025. But with presumably more, it's more difficult this year perhaps than any other in recent memory to allocate funds to do things like TikTok and experimental marketing that we think might give you great exposure. What would you say are the sort of the must-have areas of marketing that any hotel just simply couldn't be without in these times when budgets are being tested?
I think it's the visibility more so than anything else. We're going through and it's a really obvious one to say, but we're going through a mass overhaul of our website at the moment because, again, I think technology moves on so quickly, and ultimately what guests are looking for moves on so quickly that really within a 2-year time frame, you can look at your website and go, wow, so massively outdated. That's an drastic overhaul, and that's what we're going through. But making sure, for me, there's a little bit of everything that we're trying to do. And I've always lived by try it, give it a go. If it doesn't work, we know it doesn't work, that's fine. But if there's no point sitting here and saying, well, we're not going to do that because we think it will work, we don't know. Let's try it. Let's give it a go and let's see what happens for us. Over the years, the traditional forms of marketing changed so much that really, when you look at what you're able to do and what you're able to do cleverly and what you're able to do cost effective, just making sure that you're involved in all of those areas to me is kind of critical. So yeah, I don't agree with throwing huge budgets at things, but equally making sure that we're smart in the way that we're doing it. And if something needs to be done, let's do it. If we need to give it a go, let's give it a go.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, let's move on to our final sort of quickfire questions. Joseph, top 3 metrics that you look at either weekly or even daily in your role as a general manager?
Occupancy and room rates, so RevPAR, absolutely fundamental. Obviously, sort of current revenue and forecast, and guest feedback. They would be 3 absolutely daily, always on the top of the to-do list.
Great. If you could magically increase either the rate, the direct bookings, or occupancy, which one would it be?
Rate, without a shadow of a doubt. So yeah, if I could maneuver that rate, I'd be very, very happy.
And finally, what do you see as the most important thing about creating a successful hotel brand?
It's being very clear about what you are, setting out what we're aiming for, what we want to be. These are our fundamentals. This is the vision. This is the culture. This is what this business needs to be about. And if you are clear on that and your messaging is always clear, I think that's it. It's always being really clear on what you are, and never overselling, never underselling, but just making sure that you have the right product and you are making sure that it's consistent, and always the best that it can be.
Joseph, been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Lovely. Thank you very much.